here.
Okay.
Because that's exactly what we're dealing with, is this whole marriage dynamic. So let me see, it's 12:18. Let me make sure this is public, because sometimes it's not public. Just have to give it a second. I do have your YouTube set up under your name. And
Thank you, sister.
yeah, have you checked it out yet?
No.
No, I know. It's okay.
Still
Okay, it looks like we have people.
caveman days.
Hi, everyone.
Hello,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you for joining us. Jeff is here, and we're just going to let people come in. We were just talking about marriages and that type of stuff. So if you have questions, you can put them on there, and I'm just going to actually write that down so others can see. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to get it. I didn't want us to go into it too much because that's really good info you were saying. Yeah. And yeah, perfect. Okay.
I didn't know we'd be live to air.
Yeah. Oh, I thought
I wasn't sure if it was just through audio or live to air.
This time it's live to air. And
I should have cleaned up my beard a little bit before getting on there.
No, it's okay. And other times, like if you want to come back on, we can do in other ways where we can talk online and record it, and then I can post it. And often I do post, but I thought it would be great to do live because people can ask real-time questions. And hi, Theodora. Thank you for joining for your first time. And that's where we'll start. Okay, we'll start here, and it will be recorded, and after we'll post, and a lot of people will take a look.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I really like what we were talking about, but I want, can you just tell us more about yourself and about how you came on this journey? Because what I felt, because I kind of had a little introduction when I spoke of you, I feel like your journey, you've probably known spiritual sides for a long time, but I feel like your journey personally may have started like 5 years ago or something like that, like around that time, because I just remember seeing your transformation and then you disappeared. So I feel like a couple years ago, you probably disappeared. But before that, I feel like you were probably coming into touch with what you wanted, right? I don't know.
Well, it's fair to say the journey's been unfolding for 39 years. The history in the dark times is just as vital as the light, if you want to call it. But my journey into a bit more conscious masculinity started about 7 years ago. Now, before I want to jump into that, I want to offer us to do maybe a little bit of intention, a little bit of prayer before we go into it. So if you're open to that.
Definitely.
I'll give it my best shot to lead it. So just asking to center yourself. Let me put your hand in your heart space. My spirit of all this audience, the spirit of Genevieve, the intention to use my words wisely to represent the divine masculine, calling in the energies of my mentors, Garth Sam, my brothers from the Mankind Project. Any masculine beings out there struggling with their masculinity, may the words that I speak be impactful for this audience and for the feminine in men as a whole, for us to bring more unison, more communication, more harmony to our lives. I think that's all I got. If you want to add anything, feel free.
I actually love the prayer you put out there. That's so nice that you asked to also touch the masculines. And no, there's nothing I would like to add except the fact that I should be doing that in the beginning of every video. So thank you for bringing awareness to that, because it feels good to actually set an intention right before, right? Beautiful. And well, the number one intention always is for me, and I should say that, is to speak clearly is really the intention, and to give conscious information out of my mouth. So yes.
Beautiful. Well, before we get started, I just want to honor you and thank you for honoring me as to invite me on a podcast to represent the divine masculine. That's a tremendous honor, and just honor you for the work that you've been going through, the transformation to get to this stage where you're now making an impact in many people's lives. So thank you for, bringing me on here. I'm new to sharing on public forums, so this is it's really a reflection for me and the work that I've done. So I just want to honor you for that before we get into it.
No problem.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so did you want to get into back to the question of where talking about my journey and how?
Yeah, this is going to be all about you.
Okay.
Because we want to know from a masculine, someone who's on the journey, who really has no problem speaking of it as well. If you want, I can make space for you somewhere for you. Making space, we spoke of that before as well. But it's nice to actually hear from someone who I know, I witnessed, like, you are really on this journey. And on top of that, not too many people will come and speak about it publicly. I do know many on the journey, but they're very shy, and they say it rightfully so, like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. And then the others that aren't too shy, I'm not sure if they're really understanding what I'm trying to do here, which is help us understand where the masculine feels the feminine can help them, where you feel that, parts are lacking that we need as a community, the whole, like, just circular, like, around the whole way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I feel I'll honor the first question you asked about my journey and the path that I had to take to get me to where I am today, which, I'm still very much working, figuring that dance of my own internal masculine and feminine energies. And maybe my journey will help shed some light on that and could be impactful for this conversation. So I grew up in Toronto. I had a colorful upbringing in my 20s, teenage years, early 30s. The conditioning, the programming that I went through was, as a man, I repressed a lot of my emotions. Boys don't cry, buck up and deal with it. I was the Ooga Booga type mentality. And I was an alpha male. I was kind of leader of the pack. And what I thought was a man was, as I said, really, I learned to repress my emotions at a young age. And getting into my teenage years, I got into selling weed. And I was this, I was conditioned to think, to never show weakness. The more masculine you were, the more sexual partners you had. In my early 20s, I was the life of the party. Who could drink, fight, and fuck the most, really? And I seemed to be a thoroughbred at all of them at the time. And, this continued into my 20s, early 30s, where literally the weekend warrior mentality, and my weekends were pretty extended, 4-day weekends at times, and just drinking myself into a stupor. And had many sexual partners. I couldn't really ever be present for a relationship. I had some wounding where I would tell myself I never want to settle down. I'm not sure where that stemmed from, if it was potentially rocky times I witnessed my parents having, but I had this thing in my head that I was never going to settle down. And I had recognized now in my older years that I really had an unhealthy relationship with my own feminine essence, which I have a bit of an issue with labeling things feminine and masculine, but I think for better or worse terminology right now, in the world of duality, I will use those terms. Being more in touch with my emotional side, or that was something that it took me a long time to cultivate. So for me, I was in a life of narcotics, which further put me into the shadows. I couldn't be seen I didn't allow myself to be seen, be expressed, be vocalized, be heard, and that led to a battle with decade and a half long battle with depression, which I'm still admittedly having the pleasure of working through. Strong teacher. And did not realize, I'm backtrack a bit. When I hit 32, I came to the point where I could no longer really live with my thoughts. I couldn't sleep unless I was buckled drunk. I couldn't allow women into my heart or close enough to really connect on an intimate relationship. I couldn't let them see the wounding. I had no idea how to let that be seen. So I'd do this tug of war. I was too wounded to let them in, but too wounded also to let them go. And not something I'm proud of, but recognizing that was part of my journey to get here. Anyways, so at 32, I went to see a psychiatrist. I finally took some steps into taking accountability and responsibility for my life. And that was like the first stepping stone onto the path towards, the path that's unfolded towards somewhat liberation and to be, conscious of my own behaviors and actions. So, psychiatry had served its purpose. I was able to just go and unload and really just first time allow myself to cry and be vulnerable, which was quite helpful. That ran its course at some point where I realized it wasn't serving me any longer, and I sought out more of a spiritual advisor, which led me to something called Vipassana meditation, which is a 10-day silent retreat where you sit in silence for 10 days, meditate maybe for 5 to 8 hours a day. And that was at the height of my debauchery lifestyle, 200 drinks a week. I was averaging random partners all the time, liberal use for dark narcotics, really struggling with my emotional well-being. So I went at the peak of my debaucheryness and sat in silence for 10 days. And I can look back and say that was probably one of the choices I made that saved my life. I was really in a space where, I'd be dead or in jail most likely. So that was a big stepping stone for me, getting to the Vipassana meditation. Slowly, one foot in front of the other, I started to develop more of a mindfulness of my actions, really. Did it transform overnight? No. It took probably 6-7 years to go from 200 drinks a week, 250 to 100 to 50, 10 to now, I might have a couple cocktails twice a year. Something that's loosened its grip severely on the stranglehold it had on me. And there's so many journeys in between those stories that I could get into, which have led me here, but it just got me, all of my struggles and all of that guilt, shame has directed me to a deeper sense of purpose of, really contributing my energies to raising humanity's consciousness, and all the hurt that I believe that I had caused and caused my own self, I'm now being able to use as a source of strength, as an awareness that I don't want to see others struggle with the same journeys that I have struggled with. And it's got me on a path more of being of service to humanity. And it's so many more tools in between from the age of 32 until now that I've incorporated. And it's been quite a journey. So,
well, you've been on this, during this time you're speaking of, were you meeting a lot of other people like yourself that were becoming awoken and aware of how they were affecting other people or their own life or whatever the concern may have been?
100%. I feel your vibe. We're magnets for each other. You're going to attract people of the same resonance, the same vibration. And when I started to shift, open up, and speak vulnerably about some of the sharing that I went through, I'll be honest. So prior to 32, I felt like I was in this. What's the word I'm looking for? The toxic alpha masculinity, ooga booga, drinking profusely, repressing all my emotions. I was always somebody who loved his peers and supported them. I had no idea how to be in touch with my emotions at all. And it was just my way or the highway mentality, power through everything, repress. And then I let the walls. I couldn't admit to myself that I was depressed. That was the biggest daunting thing. I was as tough as nails, drug dealer who had a big crew. And for me to admit to my own self that I was depressed meant defeat. Finally, I did and let the walls down, and this flood of emotions came out. But then I feel like I swung into this unhealthy, toxic, feminine energy. And if you haven't done the work to be in touch with your own feminine essence, be emotionally intelligent, to know how to process your emotions, know how to make space, to hold space for yourself to process your emotions, it can come out from my experience. I just speak from mine. I don't want to talk about all feminine out there because I can't represent that. But for me, when I finally took the steps to get in touch with my emotions, it came out in a toxic way of victimization. I was depressed, and I let the world kind of walk on me for a couple of years, and I'm still coming out of that, to be honest. I'm now coming back to center somewhat, I feel. But the pendulum went from this toxic masculine on one side and swung all the way to this toxic feminine energy. At least that's how I view it, where I just surrendered to depression and I started trauma bonding with people. And it's a part of the process. The story of why you are certain ways has some strength to it. But I was blaming, my poor upbringing on everything. Like, my father wasn't emotionally intelligent and he couldn't express his feelings at home. And therefore I am a victim to that and suffer with that as well. And there is some truth to, I believe, for the masculine being who hasn't developed that emotional intelligence enough to be emotionally expressed, articulate his needs from a heart-centered place. This has been going on for generations. So there is work that I feel as a man I'm doing now that is liberating not only my own self, previous generations, and future generations. I don't believe time is linear. But this has been going on for a long time, where the masculine has repressed a lot of his own emotional well-being. And getting into that space of like opening up the heart again is sticky, uncomfortable, and daunting for my own self. I can only speak from the I. And then from my experiences talking to a lot of men and getting more into men's groups and recognizing, hey, your ego wants to think that you're the only one who's going through this. And oh man, like, this is only you, and you have to like hide in a corner because no one can relate to you. But that's your ego who wants to keep you in separation. When I got to really start doing some opening myself up and allowing other men to see me, I recognized I had an issue with, my conditioning was that I had to show up empowered in front of men at all times, and I couldn't show weakness. That was my thing. Never show weakness. Can I swear?
Yeah.
Like, buck the fuck up and deal with your shit. That was like my mentality as an alpha male. And that's my conditioning I went through as a child, right? And you're never allowed to be vulnerable. You're never allowed. I couldn't cry. I had a monster breakthrough last week where I cried for 8 seconds in front of my parents, which was a huge thing for me. And I encouraged tears. I look forward to the day where I can have just a wall of tears coming out, But back to what I was saying, I'm really present to the fact what I call emotional constipation is prevalent amongst men, and I'm a stand to liberate all men from mental suffering and to be a stand for creating a world of conscious masculinity. That's kind of, I've been diving deeper into like what am I stand for? What am I doing right now? Like, what is my purpose? And that's still unfolding. But so yeah, there's a lot. I've been going through a lot, to say the least. I've done a lot of work to get to where I am, and I feel right now, like, sometimes I forget I'm just doing so much work that you have to let, like, you can't get lost in the work sometimes. Like, step in, do your own personal work, and allow, like, your spirit and your consciousness to catch up to you,
to come through you.
So yeah, it's been a journey. And lots to go through.
Do you mind just going back and telling us, because this is mainly feminines here, how while you were going through this process, because I do feel a lot of the masculines are going through this, did you have people you pushed away that were feminine? Did you have any sort of relationship you were involved in at the time? And did it change your views of the feminine? Like, I'm trying to hear, what did it bring out in regards to feminines you knew at the time? Like, did you apologize, or did you notice that you had done things to them that may have hurt them? And I'm not blaming you, like, everyone takes responsibility for themselves. But I do personally feel that we do have a responsibility for what we do to others. That's me. Well, yeah, but some people are always on this, make yourself happy, worry about yourself. But for me, the truth of the matter is, like, I personally feel that what I do can hurt someone else. And it's not just make yourself happy, like, so I'm just wondering, like, how did you deal with that? Because we do have a lot of feminines on here that feel pushed away. And I personally think many of their masculines are on this journey and they feel pushed away. They feel abandoned again. Those fears come back out and get triggered. They feel unloved by their person who they love so deeply, or who they've had such a deep connection with. So is there anything you can give us on that?
I could probably go pretty deep with that one, because I've had to clean up a lot of my past. And as a conscious man, I believe, as I said, time is not linear. There's something in your field that you still feel you dishonored somebody, or something that you've done that's hurt somebody. Clean it up. That's it. Take accountability and really take the efforts of reaching out. So that was one of the things I struggled with mightily during my lifetime of really struggling with depression in my adulthood, was that I felt I couldn't let anybody into my heart because there was just so much heart wounding. And I did this push pull with a lot of women. I had a lot of beautiful, beautiful women who I still love deeply, who loved me to the best of their ability. And I just didn't have the emotional capacity to let them in as much as I would have liked to. And on the path of getting back into taking full responsibility for my life, I went through some programs designed at having you live an empowered life, where it encourages you to really clean up your act, your past, your previous ways of being, people you've hurt, called Landmark, actually.
I know
And
Landmark.
I went pretty deep with that. And I literally, my I would say this, when they offered you that challenge, mine was to reach out to all the women from my past who I felt who I had hurt in the act. In my act, was, this push pull that I would do, and I recognized that is all a cause of was from my own wounded heart and not being able to allow them in, and I struggled letting them go because they were still like I used them as a crutch at times for emotional well being, and I had a lot to clean up. So I literally reached out to I had lots of partners in my in my day of just toxicity, and I reached out to probably upwards of 20 women to really clean up my act and my past. And I had really, really beautiful feedback. So liberating myself from that past and from that pain that I was feeling inside that I had caused others. And on that topic too, a lot of the women reached back out to me too, and I was really hard on myself always, not ever really present to what I did offer, just looking at what I didn't, what I didn't fulfill on. And I can only be responsible for my well-being, and I think there's a deep, deep, the feminine has experienced such wounding and repression throughout this patriarchal era we've lived in, and I honor all the sisters who are doing the work now to be responsible for that healing. And we have to heal together, the masculine and the feminine, but there's two sides. There's also there's wounding from the ones who've been repressed, and there's woundings from the men who've done the repressing. Because a lot of men were born into also a society of not having, of only knowing how to be that strong, assertive type without having the emotional intelligence to do that. The masculine is assertive, the masculine cuts through the bullshit. And the feminine is much more in tune with the heart space. So as I shared earlier, we are magnets for each other. So if I haven't done my work and I'm still playing, as I shared with you, I was in this wounded victim state, I was attracting beings of the same vibration. So there's two sides to responsibility here. And I don't think we have to be mindful that we're both responsible for healing those wounds. And that's the only way for us both to come together and thrive. And recognizing too that those energies that we label masculine and feminine, they persist within us individually. Like, I am a man who's a masculine man I believe to be. So I might look like I have more of a masculine balance, but I also have to be in harmony with my own feminine to really support and understand, like, my sisters, in order to understand where they're coming from. And that's something that I had no conditioning growing up to be. I learned from porn. I learned from, the alpha male who had more women, from my rap music, bitches, hoes, and more money. And that's something that's really portrayed in throughout humanity. So I do believe that for the young boys growing up, we really need to hold them gently. And, there's a fine dance between calling people out on their shit, the masculine, and being able to hold them with a nurturing heart space to create forgiveness amongst the masculine and the feminine. I feel like I might have been going off in different dimensions.
No, here, because we're learning the whole way.
There's deep wounding that is healing right now, and I think the men need to step up and really hold that space for what's transpired to the feminine, and hold that space for that healing to happen. And I believe that the feminine's role is holding that space for men to get more into their heart space and not making them so wrong for a lot of the previous conditionings and maybe unconscious behaviors. Because a man, for me as a man, I've had a hard time getting to my heart space, and it hasn't felt safe for me to do that with my partners, because there's been an expectation for me to show up as strong, to show up as I'm always going to be supportive, but it's important. Yeah, it's been a challenge for me really to allow myself to get into that heart space.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Sorry. When you say it's been hard to show up as a certain way because of expectations, are those expectations that you truly think the other person had, or are those because, for us in our community, like we would just be happy for our person to come home and to just open up, and that's how we feel. But maybe that's not what we're portraying. Like, that's what I'm trying to get to. Like, did you feel a pressure from the women, or is that just something you thought of? Like, that was what you felt and not really something they showed. I'm just asking. I don't know how to word that the best way.
I believe I feel what you're asking. I think there's probably, a balance of all of the above. I think there's the societal conditioning that I went through of what I felt, how I felt I needed to show up to be a man in a relationship, to be attracted. I didn't think I could admit vulnerability or perceived weakness, which is actually strength, vulnerability in a relationship. And yeah, as this provider, as this nurturer, and I didn't necessarily have the emotional capability to allow myself to be nurtured by the feminine at the time and have really open dialogue about what that looks like my needs. I didn't think my needs were even validated, like in a relationship at times. Like I had such a struggle articulating that, which is by no means, I have to take responsibility for that. A woman can't provide me my needs if I can't, honor them myself and articulate them myself. And having said that, I've also been in many relationships where, that did not feel safe for me to express my needs. And also because of wounding that we've been through, nobody escapes their wounding. Everyone's got it. But I hadn't done the work on my own self to hold a woman in her wounding, which can come out as projecting at times. I would absorb it all and make myself wrong, as opposed to being really actually more empowering them to be like, to hold the space for whatever comes out. Like, it's going to come out ugly sometimes when we're going through our own wounds, and any real relationship has a way at poking and digging into our deepest wounds. And where am I going with this? To have the tools to allow that wounding to come out, not absorb it or make it wrong, like to hold that space as a man. I think that from what I've been through and what I've been learning, to really hold that space for whatever needs to come up, to do it, to not make it wrong, but also not absorb it, and be able to create some. Give me a second here, I want to gather my thoughts. To be able to support in a sense of, creating possibilities for that healing to take place. I'm not here to heal you and vice versa, but recognizing that we both do have healing to do. Being able to hold that space, be able to find, like, supporting you with that healing process, and not, as a man, I took on the role of being responsible for that healing.
Like,
and I recognize I can't do that for nobody. I can only be responsible for myself, and my partner has to be responsible for herself. But we can be able to be a support system for each other by holding healthy space and boundaries in the relationship. And I hope I articulated myself well there. This is something I'm still very much learning, so like my words might not be as clear and articulate as I like, because I am admittedly, like, I have a long way to go before I'm really able to like hone in on what I know would be like my highest version of self, is be able to show up in the face of whatever adversity needs to be showing up, keep my frequency, hold my space, hold my boundaries, allow, whatever needs to come up to be processed, and be able to like hold them responsible for their own healing.
Wow.
That makes sense.
No, totally does. And it kind of brings me back to another question I was going to ask and also refer to from what you were saying is basically you're bringing up, both parties have to be healed or have to at least be working on themselves. But when we talk now and you're talking about, opening space to allow whatever comes up. So I guess people can be together and still be working on themselves. And would you agree or disagree with that? Because I think
I full-heartedly agree. As a necessity.
Yes.
You have to be doing your work as an individual in order for any cohesive relationship to work, or else that creates codependency. If you're coming into a relationship and not doing your work outside of a relationship, we put on a lot of hats in a relationship. At least I have. I've been best friends. I've done the lover thing. I've done business partner. I've done the shrink thing. You can't wear all the hats. From what I've learned in relationships, is that it's important to have outside feedback and not going to your partner for all of your needs to be met, whether it's emotionally, sexually, financially, because that's what creates the codependency. Because if something's removed, if they're not there, then you're left not feeling complete anymore. So I believe it's important to have a best friend outside a relationship. Have your own separate shrinks. Take your own personal trips. All of the above. And I think ideally for my own self, I just made a hard choice to leave a woman who I was enamored with because I felt I had too much work to do on my own self before I really to step in as that representation of who I want to represent myself to be. Where was I going with this? Doing the work on our own individually, super, super vital.
And I would love to touch on what you just mentioned, that you had to make a decision to walk away from someone because you felt you weren't ready. Is that good wording?
Fair enough to say, yeah.
And so how did that happen? Because we, as our community, we deal with this quite often. And the thing is that it's maybe not expressed that, I have to deal with some stuff. A lot of times in our community, we have these terminologies like ghosting, where they just disappear. Mm-hmm. And then, they will come back and maybe say something like that. Often I think maybe the work isn't quite finished yet. But why do you feel you had to separate from someone to work on yourself?
Well, I've been going through a massive transition really the last couple of years, coming out of the drug culture which I was in. I didn't realize how much it had fractured my sense of self and how wounded I was. I recognized through the relationship how disempowered I'd been showing up in certain ways and how at a certain time I didn't feel I had the space in the relationship to do the work on my own self that I needed to do. Previously I had such a challenge just even asking for my needs to be met. And I didn't even know what they were. That's how long I've been repressing my own well-being. And, getting out of the line of work, which had really been just destroying me inside, there was a lot of wounding I needed to work through just to even be in a healthy relationship with my own self. And I really got present to how much of a victimization state I was in from a lifelong battle with depression. And depression is such a deep conversation because I think that it can be an excuse for you to take action. And the other side of guilt and shame is responsibility. And I wallowed in guilt and shame for a long time, not necessarily knowing where I had to take responsibility for. And I also think that depression can be something that's genetics, and that can be deeply embedded in your psyche from childhood that you don't even know how to work through it. So I have very much compassion for people who are struggling with that. But I didn't have the foresight to be like, I just got out of something that was really troubling, challenging times. And I needed to just take that space for me to just decompress and to give myself that compassion, to just be like, okay, you made it, you're here. And I had a conditioning in my head that I had to nurture, take care, and I played this hero role in a relationship where I would be hero for others, which was a reflection to me, was a way for me to divert me doing the work on myself. Was that I was constantly being this hero for my partners, and that is by all means for me to take responsibility for. So I really recognize that in the container of the relationship, that from what I thought was supporting her and helping her work through, her own wounding, we'll say, I was really enabling it in a lot of ways by not being able to stand in my own essence and being rooted with my own sense of self. I had a way of absorbing, taking it all in, being mixed to fix it, which really can be disabling somebody else. Because if you go in and you try to fix someone else's problems, you're actually providing them a crutch, and they're not learning the karmic loops that they need to learn. So I went through this phase where I was overly providing, being this hero, everything. Like I put so much energy into this role, and then I recognized that was something that was not going to be sustainable. And that's no fault of theirs. That's my own stuff, because I hadn't been rooted with my own sense of purpose yet. And that's understandable. I needed to give myself that space after the challenging 2-decade long journey in narcotics that was destroying me inside. So I needed to take that space just to connect deeper with my own sense of self and really be rooted with my own purpose. Because I do think the masculine, without a man being rooted in purpose and direction, you're going to be leaning on your partner to provide that. And I found myself, that's what I was doing. And I'm very much still unfolding in that sense of purpose and direction. So I had to make that challenging choice to create the space I needed for that to unfold, for my deeper sense of purpose to unfold. I have a very strong yearning to make an impact on humanity and to help raise our consciousness. And it's starting to unfold, but it's not something that I can just be like, I got to surrender to it and kind of allow it to come through. And also take action, like me showing up here and me starting to share more vulnerably. I think your peers at times can offer you reflections on directions that you're meant to go. So I am feeling more aligned with that purpose, but I had to make a very challenging decision to let go of a relationship where I love somebody as much as I knew how to. There's a deeper level out there, because I need to love myself on a deeper level. And I didn't think it would be fair for me to say I need to do this work and have her waiting, not knowing that when this work's complete, or it wouldn't sit well with me. I couldn't create that energetic container for me to go deep while knowing there's a woman who I freaking adore and love waiting for me to come out of it. It's not something that resonates with me as a man to do it to someone else. And I also got really present to, I think, in certain cultures, there's a rite of passage for boys coming into manhood. In the Western culture, you don't see that. A lot of our young boys are learning through, as I shared, media, porn, and what they're supposed to show up as men. And men are growing up later in life because of that. And I'm 39, and I feel like I'm going through that rite of passage now of boy into manhood. And I've really seen in relationship how I would compensate for my lack of emotional well-being and my lack of emotional, I think I phrased that well, on my partners. And I was just recognizing that codependency and how unhealthy that was. And I actually had a brother of mine who's done a lot of his own personal work. There's an organization called the Mankind Project that I've connected with, who really helps you work through your shadows. And he used an analogy that really, really hit home for me. And apparently it's complex amongst a lot of men. It's the feminine wound, or so he used the analogy, and I said to him, man, I've had a really challenging time walking away from relationships or leaving relationships. My last partner had called me out because she had said, well, if you want me to let you go, you gotta let me go too.
Wow.
And
that's big.
Yeah, that was a big one. I was like, damn, she called my shit out. She's right. And I shared that with my brother because I recognize it as truth. And I'm somebody humble enough to recognize when there's truth let's share with me. And he said, yeah, it's like apparently Carl Jung, or it's a thing where men, if you grew up in a household where your hero, your masculine figure, i.e. your father, didn't exude that confidence to go out into the world and be empowered on his own, your mom may have had to go into her masculine more and be the strong one,
Wow.
be the assertive one, and not necessarily provide that loving, nurturing affection that a boy needs.
Oh.
So I've realized that I've been searching for that for the rest of my life outside of that, and it's time for me to release that like mother wound and like actually give myself that now emotional support that I need. And it really resonated with me because through my own breakthroughs of having the courageousness to come and speak about the depression I was speaking with my father, who I used to blame for all of my depression, my poor dad, who had to work 70 hours a week to support his family. He had a breakthrough with me, and he cried and shared that he struggled with depression until he was 60. And then it all made sense on why he was on edge as a child, and why I felt that I couldn't express myself, that he didn't know how to be emotionally expressed, and he felt so bottled up. And looking back, I realized that my mother had to always be the strong one. I can't even remember seeing my mom cry. And don't get me wrong, my mother's a nurturing, loving, she's a superwoman, but she always was, in my eyes, the glue. My father was a beast in his own ways. Don't get me wrong, Dad, if you're never going to watch this. Like, he worked 70 hours a week his whole life to nurture his family. But he wasn't equipped with the emotional intelligence that was needed to be happy, really, and suffered for his entire life until, he said, in the 60s, he just started to be more complete with himself. So that really resonated, that analogy of like
the mother wound.
The mother wound. Like, apparently it's a thing.
That's really interesting. And I just want to repeat that for everyone. That sounds like, kind of what we talk about often with the masculines having a mother wound, where the mother has to step up and kind of take that fatherly role plus the motherly role. And then I never thought of this, but of course, so she can't be as feminine as she normally would be because she has to be this fatherly role. The father could be out working or could have just disappeared. Mm-hmm. And therefore lacking that compassionate energy towards her children. And it's no fault of their own. And they may think they are, but it's true. Like, when you say that, it really rang like as if I should know. Like, that's so true. And it's not the woman's fault at all. Like, there's so many women out there, though, that are single moms and they have to do everything. And even if they're not single moms, like your situation, they may have to do a lot of the work at home. And I never thought of that. And that leads to wounding, of course. And you're saying you searched for that love your whole life.
Still am. And just recognizing to find that within now.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is say bye to everyone. I hope you enjoyed this because we're going to continue recording. But I want to shut this segment off and we'll save the next one for after because we're at 43 minutes and that's like usually when people don't watch anymore. They're quite busy. So everyone, thank you so much for this. I am going to do some more questions. You are welcome. Thank you, Denise and Michelle and Angela. You're welcome, all of you. I am going to record some more questions with Jeff. However, I'm just going to cut this off for now, guys, and I'm not going to come back on live. I'll post the next video a different day so we can actually take this in because this is a huge message that we're learning about. I'll get into the other questions. So thank you so much, everyone.
Question.
Yes.
Is it done?
No.
Am I able to offer a blessing?
Yes.
Prior to shutting this down?
Yes. Thank you.
So there's a Woman's Warrior song that I learned in my trips to the Andes in Peru, which is from an indigenous tribe. I'm not sure which one that I'd like to share.
Yes.
Okay, so.
Do you have instruments?
No, just my voice. Find it. Hey, 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 yeah, hey, oh, yeah, hey, oh, hey, hey, yeah, hey, oh, yeah, hey, oh, hey, yeah, hey, oh. Hey, 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 yeah, hey, oh, yeah, hey, oh, hey, 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 oh, yeah, hey, oh, hey, hey, oh. All right, blessing
Thank
sister.
you. And
Thank you
everyone,
for taking me in. Hope there's some value here in what I shared. Much love to you.
thank you so much. And everyone, Jeff does have a YouTube channel, which has just started. And I'm sure now he's going to be on there posting some more videos for the masculines and feminines. It's literally Jeff Larden, right? How do you spell your last name?
Larden.
Yeah.
First name is Jeff with a G, Geoff.
And I spelled that wrong, but for now it's with a J. And I thought of that too because the GEOFF thing. But we will switch that up. But for now, if you want to find him, and I'll put the link after I switch that later today, but you can find him right now under Jeff with a J, because I did open that for him knowing that this was going to touch a lot of people. Thank you so much. And they all say thank you to you, and they're just very appreciative. Thank you. Bye for now. I think you did.